the one, the only, Bencio
Good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, ideally speaking, as we continue this book about marriage, the 10 dumb mistakes that really smart couples make. Starting a new chapter this week, chapter 9, titled, You Become an Expert at What Your Spouse Does Wrong. It's a very short chapter, but like every chapter, I'm going to divide it into two parts. He says, whenever I give a marriage seminar, I hand out a worksheet before I start. It lists the following question. Every marriage could use improvement. Assuming your marriage is good, great, or somewhere in the middle, please list two things in your marriage that have changed or make it better. Assuming your marriage is good, great, or somewhere in the middle. So somewhere in the middle would be better than good, but worse than great. I don't know, very good. The reality of most marriages are awful. I would say 96% of marriages, 6% of marriages are awful. 4% of marriages are decent. That's about it. I don't hand it out to find the answer. I know the answer. Time after time, it's two things your spouse does or doesn't do. It's never two things you do. The answer is always, my marriage is much better if my spouse would, well, ... No one ever writes, my marriage would be better if I would, ... Most people spend their married life blaming their spouse. Even if your marriage is very good, there's a belief that if your spouse would be different, your relationship would be better. Okay, so he talks about the fact that a person plays it again over and over in his mind. Things that he says you have strengths in, you the man have strengths in, you're good at, and your wife is not good at. He talks about a guy who gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He works out for 45 minutes, takes a cold shower because it makes him more masculine. And his wife doesn't take care of her health. Maybe she's overweight. She's not like him. She's not as disciplined as him. So Rabbi Schaefer explained to this person that by nature, you're a very disciplined person. Your wife is not. You have to overlook that. Everyone has their quirks. Everyone has their idiosyncrasies. Everyone has their challenges. And if you weren't human, that's why you wouldn't be in this world. People in this world are by definition not perfect. He says, one change guaranteed to make your marriage better. He says, I have a Musar exercise that I believe can solve this great challenge if you're willing to do the work. I call it work because it isn't going to be easy. If you would like to have a better marriage, and if you are serious about self-improvement in general, I want you to walk up to a mirror, look at the face staring back at you, and say these words aloud 3 times. I am a difficult person to live with. I am a difficult person to live with. I am a difficult person to live with. You say it 3 times. I, not my spouse, am a difficult person to live with. As you say those words, a voice might well up inside you. No, that's not true. It's my spouse that's the problem. Your spouse might be flawed, but you also have stuff. He says that really is the only solution to realize, turn the blame, turn the finger, not on your wife, not on your spouse, but on yourself. It's very hard to do that. We're all human beings. We all understand that the things that bother us are the things the person who lives most closely with us is always there around us for our entire married lives. You know, you can never really get away from your spouse. There's always going to be things that get on your nerves that bother you. So, as he discussed in the last chapter, he said basically that you have to live with it. Learn to live with your spouse. Learn to ignore it. Learn to, his advice in this chapter is to find faults with yourself. Now, a lot of these exercises, you look in the mirror and you say, I am bad at, they last maybe a second. It's like, Rabbi Victor Miller says that you should look and make a list of all the positive things you see in life. You can do that for a second. Or when you see people in general and you think negative things about them, think about one positive quality about these things. The problem is it works for a second, maybe an hour, maybe a day, but we're all human beings and we revert to our nature, which is to see the bad in things. That's just the way people are. People see the negative in things, and that's a reality, and you can't change that. Even if you say 1,000,000 times in front of the mirror, I'm a difficult person to live with. When you see your wife do something that bothers you, it's going to have a lot more impact than what you think your perceived faults are. Most people don't realize how drastic their faults are and how bad they are compared to their spouse. But I will say this one point I started to talk about it in the last chapter, and that is that you have to fight for your rights in marriage. And just because you know something bothers you does not mean you should say, okay, I have to live with it. If it affects you, you have to fight for those rights and be clear, have good communication with your spouse. For example, you're a person that likes to be neat. You like to have a clean house, and your wife's not so clean, or vice versa. Well, usually the woman is the one that's cleaning up. She's around the house more, she cleans up more. You have the right to, if it bothers you, be open with your wife, communicate with your wife, and impress upon her the need that you have for it to be clean. Even though she's not a clean person, if she loves you and you have good communication, she will listen to you. She will. Now, if there's other fights between you, which I say, usually stem from problems in the bedroom, but if everything is good and you have good communication, you're really open with each other, and you have a loving relationship, then she's going to want to listen to you. Women want their husband to love them. If they want their husband to love them, they will try to do whatever it is to endear themselves to their husband. They want to do that. They want to be loved by their husband. So as long as you make it clear, you don't do it in a way that's mean, you just explain that it's your need. You need your house to be clean. Or let's say your wife cooks certain foods and you don't like them, right? You don't have to deal with that. Oh, my wife's a bad cook. And when I got married, we bought this fancy bread mixer. At that point, I thought I liked home-baked challah. I liked it, Actually, my parents, we were here, and, we were picking out a bread mixer, to knead the dough. So it'd be easier for my wife. And my parents huddled, and they decided to buy the best one for her. It was like 1,700 shekel, which is close to like $500. And they bought the best one. In the first 2 weeks we were married, my wife made challah. And then I realized I don't like homemade challah. I like the store-bought challah. So, what was I going to go along? It wasn't my wife. My wife happens to bake well. She cooks pretty well. But I just don't like homemade challah. So I told her that. And, maybe it hurt her in the beginning because she wanted to make challah to make me happy. But you have to be honest with your needs and what you want. And I told her that. And if she cooks a certain food they don't like, or even if she's a terrible cook, you don't have to do a mitzvah and, sacrifice, be a martyr and sacrifice yourself your whole life and eat food that you don't like. Tell her, listen, we could buy takeout. It's okay. You don't have to say you are a bad cook. You can say, I happen to love takeout food. You say it in a nice way. I love takeout food. Your food is great, but I love takeout food even more. So there's ways of saying it, but you have to worry about your own needs. Listen, if it's things that just are pertinent to your wife, about, things that are in her life, her saying Tehillim or something like that, or her, she likes to go to like movies, whether, the modern Orthodox world, she likes to watch movies herself, like that are, standard movies, or if she's from and she likes to watch, they have special movies they make for women. If she likes that, let her do it. Let her do things that make her happy. But things that have an effect on you, that are affecting your life, have ramifications for you, you have an absolute right and an obligation for yourself to open your mouth and communicate in a nice, friendly way and a smart way that something bothers you, and let's do something about it. And if your wife truly loves you, if you treat your wife with respect, and you take care of your obligations in the bedroom, and you have good communication in the bedroom and therefore outside of the bedroom, your wife will want that love. She wants to love more than anything else. She wants you to love her. And she will do anything to make you happy. She will, if you treat her right and you have a good marriage otherwise. And therefore, it's important to verbalize these things that you need and talk about them. The first step is to realize that you need these things, because most men are not in touch with their own feelings. But once you realize them, you have to communicate that and save your marriage for yourself, not for your wife. Don't always do things for your wife. Save it for yourself. You need things, vocalize it, verbalize it, communicate it, and fight for your rights. Tell her what you need, how you want it done, and if she's a loving wife and you have a good marriage, it will be accomplished. We'll get to part 2 later on in the week. Hope you enjoyed. See you later on in the week.